Let's dive right into today's explainer. Today, we're exploring the absolutely crucial role of employment in mental health recovery. Specifically, we're going to look at how rehabilitation counselors support individuals with disabilities in securing and maintaining truly meaningful work. We'll unpack the mechanics of this process, the profound psychological impact employment has, and the vital role counselors play in helping people navigate some pretty complex barriers.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start by defining meaningful work and recovery, compare job development with job placement, dive into employment's impact on mental health, outline the rehabilitation counselor's role, and finish up with a real-world case study.
All right, Section 1, Meaningful Work and Recovery, Beyond the Paycheck.
Now, this really fundamentally shifts our perspective. We so often think of a job as just an economic necessity, right? A way to pay the bills. But for many folks, especially those living with mental health conditions or disabilities, employment is actually an integral part of the recovery process itself. As this quote highlights, work is about independence. It's about forging your identity, finding a sense of purpose, building social connections, and feeling like you genuinely belong in your community. When we look at work through this psychosocial lens, it becomes crystal clear why vocational support is so critical in rehabilitation.
Moving right along to Section 2, Job Development via Placement, Understanding the Mechanics.
So there's a really important delineation here between two terms that honestly get confused all the time. Job development is the broader, strategic process. It's all about helping someone identify, obtain, and keep an opportunity that perfectly matches their unique interests and strengths. In this phase, rehab counselors are out there collaborating with employers and community agencies to literally create opportunities for their clients. On the flip side, job placement is the tactical execution. This is the hands-on, nitty-gritty work of securing the job, building resumes, running practice interviews, figuring out workplace accommodations, and actively supporting the client during that huge transition into the workforce. And just notice the stark contrast between your traditional quick placement programs and the holistic approach of rehabilitation counseling. In traditional placement, the main goal is usually just speed, get them employed as fast as possible. But the rehabilitation counseling model, it's incredibly individualized and client-centered. Counselors work hand in hand with clients to deeply understand their interests, their barriers, and their specific support needs. The emphasis isn't just on getting a job, it's about long-term success, true empowerment, and fundamentally improving that person's quality of life.
Which brings us to Section 3, Employment in Mental Health, the Psychological Impact.
For anyone navigating conditions like depression, anxiety, bipolar disorders, schizophrenia, or PTSD, work actually provides these massive building blocks for growth and stability. Meaningful employment directly fuels self-esteem and confidence. It offers financial independence, which, let's face it, is incredibly empowering. It creates a daily structure and routine that acts as a vital stabilizing anchor. Plus, it opens the door to social connection and community participation. In a lot of ways, the workplace becomes a therapeutic environment of its own. But let's be real here, returning to work can be incredibly overwhelming. Clients face very real emotional and systemic barriers. Imagine experiencing an intense fear of failure or carrying deep concerns about workplace stigma. A client might be agonizing over how to explain a 2-year gap on their resume. And beyond that, the mental health symptoms themselves can directly impact their ability to work. Severe anxiety can completely derail a job interview, and depression can just zap a person's motivation, making the job hunt feel literally impossible. Because these hurdles are so intense, having a rehabilitation counselor in your corner isn't just nice to have, it's an absolute necessity. Now let's focus closely on this because we are busting a major myth today. There is this completely outdated idea that a person has to be fully cured or totally symptom-free before they can return to the workforce. That is simply not true. A foundational concept in rehabilitation counseling is that work is part of recovery. You don't have to wait until every single symptom disappears to go after your career goals. The very act of working supports recovery. Work isn't the finish line. It's part of the track.
Let's pivot to Section 4, the rehabilitation counselor's role, navigating the barriers.
The rehabilitation counselor wears a lot of hats. They run vocational assessments to uncover a client's hidden strengths. They do the career counseling and the active job development, but their role goes way beyond just the client. They're out there consulting with employers, actively fighting to reduce stigma, and promoting equitable hiring practices. And maybe most importantly, they provide deep emotional support. For a lot of clients, this process is about rebuilding hope and confidence after dealing with painful things like discrimination, hospitalization, or extended unemployment. They're blending mental health support with hardcore systems advocacy.
And these specific practical tools are exactly how counselors dismantle those barriers. Workplace accommodation planning is a massive part of the job. This could mean negotiating a flexible schedule so a client can still make it to therapy. It might involve modifying training materials, bringing in assistive tech, setting up remote work options, or simply having a bit more supervision during those anxious first few weeks of onboarding. These targeted adjustments are the literal game changers that make sustained employment possible. And all of this vital work is guided by some serious professional rigor. The Certified Rehabilitation Counselor, or CRC standards, demand deep expertise in career development, vocational assessment, ethical practice, multicultural competence, and unwavering disability advocacy. It's a highly specialized profession that requires a really diverse skill set.
Finally, let's ground all of this in reality with Section 5, Case Study, James.
Meet James. He's 32, and he recently finished treatment following a psychiatric hospitalization for bipolar disorder. James perfectly embodies the real emotional stakes we've been talking about. He genuinely wants to get back to work, but he is terrified of how employers might view his mental health. He's incredibly stressed about explaining his employment gaps, and right now his confidence for job interviews is pretty much rock bottom.
So let's look at the actual game plan a counselor builds with James. In Phase 1, they explore his interests and lock in on his transferable skills, reminding James of exactly what he brings to the table. In Phase 2, they tackle that anxiety head-on with targeted interview practice to build his confidence back up. Phase 3 is all about mapping out those critical workplace accommodations, maybe starting with a flexible schedule. And then Phase 4 is developing a gradual, highly manageable return-to-work plan. The counselor is providing support every single step of the way. It's not just about getting James hired, it's about supporting his whole person.
I want to leave you with a really provocative thought today. We've seen how employment isn't just a byproduct of getting better, it's an active engine driving that recovery. So if work truly is a fundamental part of mental health recovery, how can we make our own workplaces a part of the cure? How do we build environments of true inclusion and support that allow folks like James to not just survive, but absolutely thrive? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I hope it gave you a brand new perspective on the true power of meaningful work.